We have got a robust 13-game main slate for week number 8 in daily fantasy football, which means a lot of options, potentially neither a good or a bad way. It's definitely not a spot where we are scrambling to find good plays, but we do have to whittle the list down. Now, that could be made easier by the fact that there are a lot of low totals on the slate. We're going to break down what that means for lineup construction, which games we think could be intriguing, whether you should just kind of ignore game stacks altogether to get you ready for week number 8 in NFL DFS. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Thursday by Brandon Gdula. Check him out on Twitter at Gdula13. He is a senior managing editor for FanDuel Research. Brandon, week number 8 is here. There are no buys this week, so a lot of teams to choose from. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, a lot of teams to choose from. A lot of, well, I won't say a lot of, but a couple core plays that are jumping out to me. I always like that. Sometimes I do complain about having too many options and it's hard to whittle down, but it's a better situation to have than not enough. And you're kind of selling yourself on reasons to want to get access to certain players. So I'm here for it. Yeah, love a good full slate. It really takes out those I guess I have to play, player X or whatever.
Right.
And again, I've been, trying to go into this show almost not really knowing salaries to a huge degree because I don't want to look at salaries and talk myself into someone. I want to talk myself into someone and then find out what the salary is and see if I want to play that player at that salary. And so this week with that mentality, it's been pretty nice, especially at running back. So that's always good.
Yeah, I think last week, Isaiah Pacheco, I loved him and was super into him. And it was honestly a very similar spot to this week. And Pacheco's usage did not get worse or anything, but I think that he's a pivot play that I like this week as opposed to a must-have core play. And so it's nice to have a guy who is in a similar spot, similar salary, all that stuff, go from being a priority to being a secondary, very good option. I think that to me indicates how many good options we have, specifically at running back for this week. Tight end, there are 5 options that I like quite a bit too. So it's a pretty good slate. We're going to break things down, let you know our favorites at those positions, and get you ready for Sunday in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. NBA is back, so Tom Vecchio is back as well. Every weekday, breaking down NBA DFS for the Daily ISO. That is here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, along with FanDuel TV Plus. If you want to watch Daily ISO or Up and Adams, Heat Check, covering the spread on FanDuel TV Plus, go to FanDuel.com/watch and log in with your FanDuel account, or go to FanDuel TV Plus and download the app on Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Roku devices. Also, as always, we have a free play up on FanDuel Research for week number 8. Go to FanDuel.com/research. There is a link there on the front page of that, FanDuel.com/research, to find a link for the week number 8 free play. No entry fee. Might as well do it. See if you can get yourself some cash via the FanDuel Research free play. Jump into the NBA action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers get 3 months of NBA League Pass courtesy of FanDuel when they place a $5 bet on the NBA. That way, you can watch all the actions you bet on, everything from spreads to player props and more. Best of all, you'll get paid your winnings instantly. So don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets plus 3 months of NBA League Pass. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. New customer offer is first online real money wager only. First, a refund issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. All customer offer is a $5 NBA wager required. Limit 1 pass per customer across both offers. Restrictions apply. Void or prohibited. See full terms for both offers at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789 7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-OPEN-Y or text OPEN-Y in New York. NBA League Pass, local blackout restrictions apply. Let's take a look now at this week number 8 main slate, Brandon. And to me, the key question is, do I want to game stack this week? We're going to have a full trend on game stacking later on. We'll still go through the typical bookmaker stuff. But when I look at this slate, there are a lot of teams that are heavily favored. And if I look at my betting model for this week, I think they all should be heavily favored outside of the Cowboys. I think that's the one where I've taken the points on the opposing team. But like, I think that you can make pending Tyreek Hill stuff. I think you can make Miami a bit more heavily favored against New England. Same thing for Kansas City against Denver. Same thing for Philadelphia against Washington. Same thing for Baltimore potentially. Like, I think they all should be heavily favored. And I think they justify that. And that means scoring expectations for the opposing side are lower. So to me, I'm kind of leaning towards this week playing things more where I load up on the good offenses and don't really worry too much about bringbacks unless there is a super, super logical option who checks key boxes on the opposing side. So that's kind of the overview for me, is where I'm probably changing up my process for this week and skewing away from game stacks and towards more single team stacks, focusing on the good offenses here. What's the overall view for you on this week 8 slate?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to stacking, we do it long term because it is logical. I've done research on it. I have a pretty detailed post on it's still up on numberFire.com about stacking and hit rates whenever players have big games. It's called Fantasy Football Stacking Guide, examining hit rates and correlations in breakout games. But the thing that I basically learned in that, I mean, I learned a lot of different stuff, but stacking long-term is a good decision because there is relationships to target, but also relationships to avoid. But along with that, like, the probability boost of taking, good, like, let's say you're playing a receiver and you want to play a receiver in the other side of that game. Those are correlated positively, but if you just take like another well-projected receiver outside that game, it's not like your odds of having 2 great plays is like magnified by 300%. It's right. Like you can still find good plays, so you don't necessarily want to force it. I know we're going to talk more about this, but as far as stacking goes, I think that is kind of like the main overall takeaway for this week is like, the good offenses. I always, I'm still lower on offenses that I can't bring back easily. Mm-hmm. But for this week, it's going to be crucial. But I think that with the way that the slate's breaking out, there are a lot.
I don't know what that was regarding, but she's barking at something.
She usually barks like at least at a moment where it's like
logical.
Yeah.
She's unhinged. It's okay. There were some boxes outside this morning. She's off a rocker. It's okay.
Yeah. The boxes can do it. But yeah, I don't really remember where I was in that line of thought. But it's going to be a good week. A lot of teams to sift through, and that's always better than not enough teams.
And I think that also does decrease the need to game stack too, having more options at our disposal. So I think that's important to remember as well. Let's dig into some injuries impacting week number 8 here right now. Big one is Brock Purdy in concussion protocol, likely putting Sam Darnold in line to start against the Bengals. Total for that game went down 2 points to 43.5, and the spread tightened to 3.5 as well. So Sam Darnold likely starting, likely with no Deebo Samuel. Trent Williams did not practice on Wednesday for the 49ers either. How does Darnold starting without those guys potentially impact your view of Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle? And any thought to you in using Darnold himself at $6,100?
I think I would knock Ayuk the most just because I think that there is something to having a rapport, which I'm sure that Ayuk himself is going to have a bit of a downgrade from Darnold, even if look, you got to ask yourself, how good is Brock Purdy? How good is Sam Darnold? I think probably consensus is like there's a huge gap and that Purdy's good, but I know a lot of people make the case that Purdy's, okay. But I always have thought that Sam Darnold was a bit underrated and put into a lot of bad positions. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. But like, it's not going to really change a whole lot for me with how I view Christian McCaffrey. Tight ends, I kind of worry less when it comes to quarterback play, just because of the whole, area of the field that tight ends get targeted. So I don't think I would really force Ayuk necessarily, but I'm fine with McCaffrey and Kittle. And I see here a question that would you consider Darnold?
Yeah, I asked you that.
Okay. I missed that. I was trying to dig up some Brock Purdy numbers. He has been, he's like efficient. I get that, but any Darnold for you?
I think that if you gave me Trent Williams and Debo, I would say absolutely. Because like the system is so good, Darnold is competent. Like I think that there'd be enough factors there to say definitively yes. If Williams can't go, I know Debo won't play, but if Williams also can't go, like Purdy wasn't lighting it up from an efficiency perspective before his injury. And like we can have our opinions of Purdy if we want. I think he's fine. But like the betting market said that Darnold is a downgrade. This total came down, and so did the spread. And so that means that as a result, the 49ers implied total went down a decent amount with this shift to Darnold as opposed to Brock Purdy. So I think that does downgrade it. And like, I think there is consideration to Darnold. And 61 does open up a lot, but I feel like I would rather not. Like I can get exposure via Kittle if I really want to. So, I mean, Kittle is also super low salaried. So I agree with you where Kittle's still fine. McCaffrey, I'm not going to downgrade him too much. Played every single snap Monday despite being questionable for that game, which is absurd. And he's probably going to play every snap now with Purdy being out. Like, I'm not going to upgrade him, but I'm not going to downgrade him either in this spot. So would like to avoid Darnold. It depends on how much I feel like I need to get to guys like, Kelsey's high salary, McCaffrey's high salary, stuff like that. But right now, I'd like to avoid it, but especially if Trent Williams cannot go, I think that I'd like to not be there. But the other guys are fine. I agree with you. Ayuk gets the biggest downgrade.
The hardest part is quarterback is the easiest position to predict in a lot of ways. Like long term, we have Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Again, I know the salaries are, there's a cavern there.
Yeah.
But there are quarterbacks who can get you 35. And what do you think like the true ceiling for Darnold is?
21. Like that was Purdy's ceiling, was like 21 FanDuel points. That's
maybe,
why I say I'd rather not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying no, to be clear. So like if you think that Darnold is like super talented and like in a feast here, which is a fine opinion to have, use him. That's fine. But like I think that the ceiling is the biggest concern for me. The floor, we fine. But like as we know, we don't use that F word on the show. So, we use I guess we don't use other F words. That's in Slack. But like, the floor is fine. It's the ceiling that concerns me there.
Yeah. And, I know we're spending a lot of time on Darnold, but it really changes the slate.
It changes the entire slate. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea of what I was saying with like Lamar or Mahomes or Hurts getting you 35 and like Darnold getting you 21, it's that will you use that extra salary to get other like ceiling players. So, running back has a lot of plays where you don't need Purdy to get to. It's kind of McCaffrey. So you're asking like, would you stack McCaffrey with Darnold? I think that's viable to get access to all of their.
And One Eye Jack on YouTube says yes. Darnold, CMC, Kittle, which I think is totally fine given McCaffrey's target share. I think that's totally fine.
Then you move to receiver. Tyreek, didn't have the ceiling game against the Patriots early on. Kupp's coming off of a down game. AJ Brown at 87.
Don't talk about that person. Don't mention his name on our show. Come on. Disrespectful.
I think you get to like AJ Brown at 87, you don't have to play Darnold to get there necessarily. Jamar Chase though at 85 is like, well, if you like Darnold, you probably like that game, so maybe that's how you get access to Jamar Chase. Although
Sure.
that's a whole conversation. So it's like, how many guys are you really getting access to that you can't play otherwise? Like
Mhm.
maybe you can then stack like Kelsey with someone else, like
Sure.
one of those other studs. But I don't think it's like there's not like the one or two sort of shootout games where um you're getting access to like two high salaried guys going back and forth. So I don't think it's necessary this week, but I think we're both open to it.
Yeah, receptive, but not trying to force it right now. The incentive to get to Tyreek Hill may be lessened because Tyreek Hill is banged up. Missed practice Wednesday with a hip injury, and it sounds like there's a legit chance he does not play Sunday. Like Tua was talking about, oh, what it'd be like to play without Tyreek. We expect him back at some point. It's like, uh-oh, red flags. That's not great. Raheem Mostert also sat out practice on Wednesday due to an ankle injury. They're facing the Patriots. We'll talk about them in the bookmaker section. Deshaun Watson won't play for the Browns this week. PJ Walker will start in his place. The Browns also expect to be without Jerome Ford. He has an ankle injury. Kareem Hunt didn't practice Wednesday, but he's expected to go. So, what's your view of the Browns in Seattle with PJ Walker starting?
Uh, this is this is a tough game because I kind of is Metcalf going to be good to go this week? You think?
Yeah, he was full on Wednesday, full or limited Wednesday. He
Full on. Okay.
practiced.
All right.
Lockett didn't though. We can just do that one now.
Yeah. Okay.
Zach Charbonnet limited. DK Metcalf full. Kenneth Walker didn't practice with a calf injury. Tyler Lockett is with a hamstring injury. I think they're all going to play. But yeah,
There's so much yellow on the running
nobody
back
is healthy
section
in
of
this
this
game.
game. Yeah. So it's like one of those where it's tough. It's like the intersection of opportunity, but also lesson deficiency
Yeah,
and what wins out and like what's super relevant. But also you're not getting like great discounts on a lot of these play like Metcalf. 75 is fine. Kareem Hunt is like his salary is 7,000.
I think that's the biggest blessing on this slate because putting him at 7,000 means I don't have to use him.
Yeah.
Like he's beat up, he's old. He's playing for a team with a backup quarterback against a defense that's better than it was previously. Like, thank you, FanDuel, for allowing me to ignore Kareem Hunt. I appreciate that.
Is there anyone in this game like you're going out of your way to play?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think it's the worst. Yeah, not the worst game on slate, but it might be worse. Like Atlanta, Tennessee is worse. This one's number 2. I'd rather stack the Giants Jets game than this one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's just like if this game is relevant, it's going to come from a few guys.
Don't care.
Okay.
I get why you're asking, and I appreciate you asking. To be clear, because I don't dislike you. I appreciate why you're asking. Your thoughts are valid, but I don't care. Zay Jones missed another practice Wednesday with his knee injury. They had a mini bye, so this probably puts Jones on track to sit once again. How does this impact your view of Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if we didn't have an injury to talk about, which we still do. Like, what do you think's going on with Calvin Ridley?
I don't know. It's weird, right?
It is peculiar. Last game, 5 yards on 4 targets. 3 of them were downfield. Catch rate over
I
expectation
think
of
that's the
-20.
problem, though, is that he's getting only downfield targets. Like, I
Yeah,
want some bunnies mixed in there at some point.
yeah. This is there's someone in particular I'm thinking of who basically only got downfield work, and it was a couple years ago, but this is
Uh-oh.
now a
Say it.
terrible.
Say it.
No, I can't remember who I'm thinking of
Oh,
because
MVS or no?
maybe that's who it was, but I feel like it was someone a little bit more elevated. But I mean, the salary's down to account for all this. What's his full season like?
Full
Catch
season
rate over.
target share? Or do you
No,
want the one without Zay?
I mean, I'm looking at full season catch rate over expectations, basically 0. Tons of downfield work, but like, yeah, we want a mix. I mean, 4.3 of his 6.9 targets on the full season are downfield.
Mm-hmm.
That leads to upside, but it also leads to a lot of risk. I don't know if
Yeah.
the risk is necessary
Yeah.
against Pittsburgh. They do allow a lot of like a high ADOT, but Ridley or Kirk in a vacuum.
Kirk, I would say for right now, because like it's not like he's getting no downfield work. His deep target share overall is 28%. So like he has a decent path to like a ceiling. We saw him break off a long one. It was on like a shorter pass on Thursday, so it's not like super projectable in that regard. But like I'd rather use Kirk, but I do think that like Ridley's going to bounce back eventually. I just don't know if the bounce back will occur against a defense that's good.
Yeah, and we're talking game stacks in some form or fashion are going to be the talk of the week,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever you can find it, like mini stacks. But I love George Pickens. I think he's a great player. He obviously has like 20-point upside. He's got 100-yard and touchdown upside. Like, is like a Pickens Ridley or Pickens Kirk like mini stack something that you think you would get to in a reasonable amount of lineups, or is that just such an afterthought that like it doesn't even matter?
Pickens' salary is higher than I'd want it to be, is what I would say at 74, because you've got Jalen Waddle at 71, given the Tyreek uncertainty. You've got Jordan Addison at 73, Zay Flowers well below him at 65. I think I like all those guys more than I like him. Even Devontae Smith at 69, given his struggles, I think that I'd rather get there. So I don't see myself getting to Pickens despite being okay with him. So probably not. No.
Yeah, 75 yards or more in 4 games, over 103. But like, yeah, I mean, so what are we doing with the Jaguars? Anything? Our Jaguars?
Yeah, I mean, ETN's salary is finally appropriate at 87. Probably a little bit on the higher end of where it should be, given that his red zone role is still not perfect. 31.8% red zone share so far this year. You can run on the Steelers. They've had some injuries up front that have allowed that to occur. So I think that like from a matchup perspective, ETN's my favorite, but then I'm displeased with the salary. So I am fine with Kirk, fine with Ridley, fine with Ingram, but I'm not itching to use anybody here, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, there have been weeks where we just load up on Jacksonville. Don't think it's going to be this week.
I'd agree with that as well. Ryan Tannehill, unlikely to play this week against the Falcons. Will Levis and Malik Willis sound like they will both play. I have to assume that this torpedoes the Titans. Not going to even ask on that. Does it torpedo the Falcons on the opposing side as well, though?
I think they've torpedoed themselves in a lot of ways. So,
yeah.
Again, I'm
like Bijan's salary is good, but I don't want to use him in this matchup. So like I'll get them eventually. I just don't want to use him here. And his red zone role still sucks. Like
yeah, and it wasn't just like it's not just last week where he
right.
had the one touch. His role has been imperfect. He's really really good, but you would think that he probably gets a little bit of extra work if he's feeling good
But it's
this
such a
week.
bad matchup.
But it's a bad matchup. The salary is not fully accounting for the fact that he could play. It wouldn't surprise me if he played like 40% of the snaps and like led the team in running back snaps.
I don't think the snaps will be that low, but I think like the red zone role is the big. Like I think he'll if he's healthy, which it sounds like he is, he'll be fine. But like if you look at his 6 full games, his red zone share is 22.9%. That's very low for a running back. Like Isaiah Pacheco's red zone role is imperfect. He's in the same salary range as Bijan Robinson, but his red zone usage is 9 percentage points higher than Robinson's in the 4 games with Pacheco having a higher snap rate. Like even the imperfect guys have better red zone roles than Bijan. So I love the talent, love the player. I like his between the 20s role. I just don't like it once I get inside the red zone for that salary. So I'll get on him again, but not against Titans.
Yeah, now I'm just envisioning like a 100-yard 2-touchdown game to quiet people up from. Well, I guess the Falcons don't even think there's anything wrong with not disclosing information, but so maybe they won't fight the narrative. But
yeah,
I'm out on this game.
Yep, same. Zach Moss didn't practice Wednesday with heel and elbow injuries. He may be good to go, but it does open the door for some more Jonathan Taylor. We got actually increased usage in week 7 as well. The snaps weren't there, but like I care more about the usage in that game. JT had 18 carries, 4 targets, 120 yards in scrimmage, and he had 7 out of 11 red zone chances for the team in that game. So what's your interest level in JT at 71? Even if we assume Moss goes, would you consider Taylor in this spot?
I don't know with Moss if I need to get there. I think there are better plays. I think with Moss, like I'd have a hard time getting there over Brees, personally.
I think Taylor is a differentiation piece, like a pivot, more so than a core play.
Even like with Moss.
Yeah.
Without Moss.
Was it you who was talking about like, think about this guy's salary in a couple weeks? Like Jonathan Taylor's salary in a couple weeks would be 8,000.
Yeah, it was with Brees Hall. I've done it with a few people.
It's a good ration. It's a good line of thinking. We should do that more often. I think here in a couple of weeks, I can almost guarantee you his salary will be $8,000.
Yeah, I think he's definitely in the conversation, but with Moss, I'm still going to go Brees there. But let's say Moss is out. Does Taylor enter like? Look, I think we're both in agreement. Tony Pollard at 76 is the best running back play
at any salary. Yes,
we're both really, really good with Darrell Henderson at a $5,900 salary.
Good with Brees too. I'll put myself in that bucket too.
But like we're probably trying to get those guys with Henderson and Pollard into like our main lineup.
Mm-hmm. JT catapults into that tier, not at the top of the tier, but into that tier if there's no Zach Moss.
Okay, yeah. I'd have him, Brees, in that conversation for sure. And that's nothing against like McCaffrey. It's just if you can get in this day and age, if you can get great workloads in the 7,000 range at running back, that means something more than it used to.
Yeah. I think that like if Moss does go, then like JT will probably wind up being like just a good tournament pivot.
Sure.
Where like I need to get off of Hall in some spots. It's a low total game. Something like I still like him a lot, but like a JT Kamara game stack is pretty fun. So I could see myself definitely doing that. But if we get no Zach Moss, JT then leaps into the same tier considering salary as Pollard and Hall. TJ Hawkinson has practiced Wednesday with a foot injury. He played through it in week 7, so he should be good to go. We'll talk about him and them in the trend section. Aaron Jones and Luke Musgrave both missed practice Wednesday for the Packers. Sounds like Jones will play, but his hamstring is still sore. And Musgrave has an ankle injury. Christian Watson practiced despite looking like he had been like shot in the knee at the end of week 7. Like you thought that he got sniped from like the roof. But he's fine apparently. Cool. Any interest in the Packers, their passing game against the Vikings this week?
It's another one of the situations where I like some of the Vikings, specifically Addison and Hawkinson.
Mm-hmm.
Do I force a bring back? Probably don't need to.
Yep.
This team does spread the ball around, by which I mean the Packers, more than I would like. Romeo Dobbs' salary is up to 67. I don't love that. Jaden Reed's is 58. Really 67 is really high.
Yeah.
What about Reed at 58?
I would have used him if there were no Watson, but with Watson being good to go, I'm probably just not going to use anybody here.
You wouldn't use Watson at 63 if he's full by Friday?
Actually, that's a good question. Yeah, I might. If it's a Hawkinson or Addison team, I might. I'm not going to lock myself into it because I think that Zay Flowers is like Pollard tier as far as how good he is relative to salary, but like I would consider it at least.
I came into the season low on Watson due to the quarterback switch and because he just played like crazy on a per target basis last year, but I largely like what I've seen from him so far. It's just been a like hectic season with the injuries.
One note on Watson is he was actually full Wednesday. Again, it looked like he got shot. I don't know. Like it was crazy. Like he was in so much pain. So he's somehow fine. I don't know. I thought he was done for the year when I saw that play happen, but he's fine. So I think he's the one guy I'd consider there personally.
Yeah.
Let's dive in now to the bookmaker section for this week. The highest implied total on the main slate belongs to the Dolphins. That's at 28.5 against the Patriots. Total is 46.5. Dolphins favored by 9.5. So I actually got that implied total wrong. Anyway, it's very high. Wind is currently projected to be 15 miles per hour, and these two teams have already played. But as we discussed last week, the Patriots defense, not as scary as it once was, but now it is wind plus Tyreek Hill being banged up. Those are two downgrades for this Dolphins offense, and Raheem Mostert's banged up. So how are you viewing this game now that we know Hill and Mostert are not at full health right now?
Well, no Patriots.
Thumbs
even
up
though
on
I
that.
asked about Kendrick Bourne last week. I think Tua with Tyreek is like the prototypical differentiation play at quarterback. I just don't know if you have to get there necessarily. Popularity at quarterback is always pretty flat. On a 13 game slate, it's going to be flat, especially if Darnold is being considered by people. So I think it's mostly just Waddle for me as a priority in this game because the salary is not fully accounting for what his ceiling can be.
I'd agree with that. I'm okay crossing off Tua if there's no Hill and the wind stays high.
Yeah.
At $83. So to me, it would really bring things down to Waddle. And even if Mostert's okay, like his salary is a little bit higher than it should be at 9,000. Yeah, I think the question here is, do you consider Savon Ahmed or Jeff Wilson if Mostert can't go? Or is that a bridge too far for you?
I mean,
Ahmed's 48 on FanDuel.
yeah, and he outsnapped Wilson, the spreadsheet ruiner, 18-7 last week. Just 2 carries, 2 targets. I think like if Mostert's just straight up out,
Yeah,
you could probably just guess on either one.
Yeah.
And there's like going to be some, like they're going to rely on the running back still.
yeah,
Especially with like, but then the question comes, all right, no Tyreek, no Mostert. How big of a downgrade is it to this offense? Are they going to be in the red zone a lot?
right.
And that, I mean, that matters. I think for Ahmed at 48, it matters less.
Yeah,
Like we were shout out Zach Evans, but if you can get it back with like a claim to a majority workload,
yeah,
at this low of a salary, this is different than like 62 or 63 or something like that. I'd rather play Ahmed without Mostert than like Sam Darnold.
Yeah,
to save salary and like
I agree with that
things up
because there's a path to a ceiling there for Ahmed. And like, yeah, you could say that Wilson was getting eased in last week because he's coming off the injury, but like he's been coming off the injury for a while. Like his agent was saying in week 1 when they put him on IR, oh, he'll be back right away in week 4 or week 5, and it's like he wasn't back then. So I don't know. I think Ahmed would be the lead guy. It'd be like a 55-45 split, but 55 for Ahmed at 48 is enough. Personally, I would use some Wilson too. I would probably go like 60% Ahmed, 40% Wilson as far as exposures. If I were to, I wouldn't use it one of them in every lineup, but like between the two, I'd do that way.
Let me ask you this then. Let's say no Mostert. Who are your like 3 because again, I think this is a week where you can easily flex a running back.
Mm-hmm.
Who are your priority running backs then?
I don't think either Wilson or Ahmed jumps above Darrell Henderson at 59. Okay. What about you?
I think I'm the same.
Yeah.
But with the I mean, I think I'm the same. I think I'd still go Henderson. But my question to you is then Pollard, Henderson, these guys don't have to jump over Henderson, but are they like, is Ahmed your third back?
No, because I would still rank Kamara above him. So Kamara would be my top 3. I know we can talk about it a lot earlier, but like he's in my top 3.
I'm a Brees guy, so.
Oh, Brees is up there too. Sorry, I forgot Brees. Yeah. So Kamara and Brees to me are kind of similar, honestly.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't put either guy above. It would dilute their share a bit because the secondary pieces would be better. But like I'd still want to be like double the exposure to Hall and Kamara versus like I think I'd want to be around 20 to 30% Ahmed / Wilson versus 60-70% for Hall, Kamara, guys like that.
Yeah, a double value running back lineup is its own thing, so that was also worth discussing.
Yeah. What about anything else with the passing game pieces here, or do we cover it with Waddle just saying that he is like the best play? Because I think that's probably it.
I think it's Waddle, and then it would just be dispersed from there if Hill's out.
Cedric Wilson did play well on Sunday. I thought he looked good. You know, hashtag watch the film, bro. His salary is 5,000. Wouldn't get there, but like, you know, of those guys, I'd like him most, but I think it's really just all about Waddle for me.
It's a 13-game slate.
Correct.
You don't need to force too many things like that.
You're very correct. Okay, so let's talk now about the Chiefs and the Broncos, where right now, a repeat divisional matchup. Broncos, or total for this game is 46.5. I must have the Broncos are favored, and luckily my brain realized that was very stupid. Chiefs are favored by 7.5. That gives them the second highest implied total on the slate. In the first matchup between these two teams, which was 2 weeks ago, the final score is 19-8. A lot of wind in that game, though, and it was a Thursday night game. So I don't want to put too much stock. I also think Kelsey was banged up. He had that ankle sprain and then still went bananas in that game. So I don't care too much about that first matchup. What's your view of the Chiefs and any bringbacks here on the Broncos side?
Chiefs, I'll say, like, look, I want to get to Hurts, Mahomes, or Lamar in my main lineup at quarterback. These guys just have tangible ceilings that they hit pretty frequently. Haven't seen it from Mahomes super often this year, but we got it last week with the 4-touchdown game, over 400 yards. So I'm probably leaning Lamar, but Mahomes is definitely in that conversation.
How big is the gap between those two for you?
Lamar versus Mahomes. It's pretty tight.
Okay.
I think the conversation is where do you go with Hurts in that, though? Is
Mahomes over Hurts because he's Hurts. He's hurt.
Then we go to Kelsey, and that salary is, I almost said egregiously high, but it's not egregious. It's just
it's justifiable, but it's high.
It's like there's no room for error. You know, at a certain point, if he doesn't get you, he got the 29.9 last week. Like if he doesn't get you, 17 or so around, like,
yeah.
Like if he gets you 13, that's not a good enough return.
No.
So at a certain point, you know, when you score touchdowns, when you have yardage, your salary goes up. Obviously that's how it works, but I'm not saying he's like priced out, but it's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
For him to regret you not using him.
The FOMO is lower the higher the salary gets.
Yeah. So I'll get there with enough lineups, but he's not someone I'm trying to prioritize with one lineup,
right?
Because of that salary. And then talk to me about your guy, Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, I think that he's in that second tier behind Brees, behind Kamara, behind Pollard. I think he's similar to Jonathan Taylor, where like I think he's a solid differentiation piece for tournaments. Snap rate was still good last week. I mean, good relative, but like again, a lower snap rate in this offense is worth quite a bit. The yardage totals have been pretty solid. In that first game against Denver, only had I think 98 yards in scrimmage, but had 16 carries and 6 targets in that game. And Denver is hideous against the run. So I see paths to Pacheco putting up 25 or so, and 74 is pretty good. So he's not a core play for me. He's like a fringe core play is what I would say. Like that's to me is like 20 to 30% roster rate. That's where he's at for me. I think that's more likely to go down than up because if JT's outlook improves, that would go down. If we get Ahmed and Wilson with no Mostert, that would go down. So probably 20 to 30% exposure is my max, but I do want to get to him because I think this Broncos defense sucks and I want to get exposure to it via this team.
Yeah, Fringecore is my favorite music genre, by the way, so shout out there. But no, a lot of green in terms of matchups on this,
Yeah,
but
it's
I
green
mean,
again this week.
it's gonna be yeah. But with with Pacheco, like last week, he was a core play by
Mhm,
necessity.
mhm.
Comparing him to Brees is like I'm taking Brees 10 times out of 10. Sorry.
I'm at 9 out of 10 because that game
Sure,
stinks. But
sure, 9 out of 10, like, that's fine, but, like,
yeah, I
it's
agree.
not really a
Yeah,
conversation, and
no, I agree.
Pacheco last week in a similar sort of matchup, like, that was he should be able to take advantage, was someone that was almost a must, to consider, but a lot more options this week, so I'm not gonna force it a ton, and then that brings us to the other side of the ball. Anything there for you?
So no, like I could see using Cortland Sutton or Jerry Judy. In the 6 games they played with Judy, Sutton's at a 24% target share. Judy's at 21%. Sutton, 28% of the deep targets and 29% in the red zone. Judy, 31% deep and 8% in the red zone. So, like, Judy's fine. Sutton's fine. But, like, I'd rather go Zay Flowers over Cortland Sutton. And would you rather use Jerry Judy at 59 or Rashee Rice at 6,000?
Um, I guess Rice.
Probably for me too. So, like, if you give me 10 Mahomes lineups, I'm probably running it back in like 5 of them with 3 Sutton and 2 Judy, somewhere around there.
Sure, and the Chiefs are their defense can really take the air out of the
Yeah.
other team.
They've been playing really well. Yeah.
Saw that last week in what was trending toward being a great offensive game, and then just
Second half, they just put the clamps down.
yeah.
Yeah. I need Javonte Williams for you or no?
No, you can do better if you're taking a time. I mean, every running back's a timeshare running back other than Christian McCaffrey, but if you're gonna take a timeshare running back, you can do it with a better offense.
I agree with that as well. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
Nope.
Okay, Eagles at Commanders. The Eagles are 6.5-point favorites here. Their implied total for this week is at 25 right now. Another elevated total, and it's another repeat divisional matchup. So all 3 of our bookmaker games, repeat divisional matchups. What could go wrong there? The first time, though, that these two teams faced, they combined for 64 points and went to overtime. Jalen Hurts' knee is banged up, but he was not on the injury report on Wednesday. Sounds like he'll play. So, what's your view of the Eagles here and any bringbacks on the Washington side?
So he wasn't even on the injury report at all.
I don't think he was. Let me double check that.
So like, how big of a downgrade is it going to be for you, knowing that he might? Yeah, I don't see him on here, but
Yeah.
like substantial for you, just because we know that
So
even
he
though
still
he's
scrambled in that game on Sunday night. Like, he hasn't been scrambling a ton this year to begin with. So I feel like it's kind of just status quo. But even at status quo, I'd prefer prefer Mahomes and Jackson over him. I'd still want to have him in my player pool, but like I'd rank him third of that trio.
yeah, he's like my Debo at quarterback because his you can't really project him the same way you project other quarterbacks because of his ability and just market share and probability that if they get the ball on the 1 yard line, he's going to get a rushing touchdown.
He has 6 rushing touchdowns in 7 games. It's bananas.
But it's not even like, oh yeah, well that's because this, or it's like, no, we know why he's
Right.
getting those opportunities, and it's unstoppable. Washington 31st in ADOT allowed, 26th in yards per target allowed on downfield passes, 24th in completion rate over expectation allowed. So like it's a good enough passing matchup. The equity there in the red zone is obvious. So I'm gonna have a really hard time determining which quarterback I go to. All 3 of those guys are I'll probably do what I did last week and pivot off the lineup that I liked and against you, but I think either way, I'm leaning Lamar first, so I don't have to
Yeah.
nitpick too much between Hurts and Mahomes. But
Yeah.
I want to make sure I have access to Hurts, especially if people are worried about the knee, because I'm not necessarily worried about that because he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to run from the 20 to score and like
Right.
on a broken play.
Right.
He can run 3 times from the one, score twice, and have good passing stats. So that's where I am with him.
Exactly. AJ Brown went nuts first game against Washington. In that game, he had 13 targets for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. And like he's been doing that all year. So it's not a huge surprise. $8,700 for him. We have Devontae Smith at 69. We have Dallas Goedert at 62. I think all those guys are very fair salaries. And I feel like I'd rather use the pass catchers than use Hurts because of the salary on him and because of their salaries and because I have Lamar and Mahomes available. So I'm pretty high on all these pass catchers here. Where do you settle in on them? Brown, Smith, and Goddard.
I like all of them. The one who's closest to being in my main lineup would be Goddard because of the position he plays.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go out of my way, I think, to prioritize Devontae Smith. Just a lot of risk there. But
Yeah.
Goddard getting a great matchup in terms of catch rate over expectation, allowed Washington's bottom 4 or allowing a top 4 catch rate over expectation to the position. So, and then Brown, I might be able to get to like a stud receiver if I play the 3. I'll just call Henderson mid tier just to keep it simple. Like if I just play like 3 mid tier running backs, like I can probably make that work. I just will point out to you though, if you like 3 pass catchers for Hurts and you know that he can still get those goal line scores, for your sake, I don't want you to be too low on him.
No, I don't think I will. Like I said, I'll rank him third, but it's because I like those other guys a lot.
Yeah.
If we go with Brees Hall, Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson, and then the Vikings defense at 37, 71-20 left. Like I would need to probably get Tank Dell. Just gonna build the entire thing here. I can probably make that work with AJ Brown. Yeah, it does include probably I mean, I can make it work. It definitely is not easy to get to Brown while using those 3 running backs, but I'd at least like to give it a shot.
So then at that rate, if we're using 3 reasonably salaried running backs,
Mm-hmm.
are we just more or less Adam Thielen 82?
What's that?
Adam Thielen's 82. Sorry, I was trying to get a receiver and look at the top guys and say, are we good? Like more or less saying no to the top of the receiver pool in terms of like our default builds.
Would you rather spend up a tight end or a receiver this week?
Define spend up.
Andrews or Kelsey?
It probably should be tight end. Those are 2 nice matchups there, but
yeah, I like the Dallas Los Angeles game a lot, which is why Kupp and Nakua are both interesting. I like CeeDee Lamb a ton at 78.
Mm-hmm.
You'll talk about him later on, but like, so I think honestly, it's another week where I just kind of want to be in the mid range a lot at both running back and receiver.
Yeah.
And maybe tight end too. So I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm settling in right now, personally.
Yeah, I know we're talking a lot of lineup construction. We have a lot left to cover, so I don't want to take up like too much time here. But we'll talk about it after I finish my first trend. I got a question for you.
Okay, so let's dive into those trends and talk here about the Dallas Cowboys offense because Brandon, they have not played a normal game yet this year. Maybe I guess 2 if you want to count the Arizona kind of normal game and the Chargers game, but it's been weird, so it's hard to get a good read on their volume. So talk to me about the Cowboys and what they've looked like so far.
Yeah, they also haven't been on the main slate since week 4.
Wow. Okay. Didn't realize that.
And as someone who focuses primarily on the main slate, and sometimes people ask me like who the night game is. Is it my brother's last week? And like who's the night game? And I'm like, it took me a second.
Great question.
Because I'm just so main slate.
Well, it's primetime Baker tonight, so that should make it easier.
Yeah. I mean, I had that one written down.
I've had that circled for a decade.
Yeah. But so I think there is something to be said for like not being on the main slate a lot, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And we have some other good offenses this week, but yeah, they've had a really weird start to the season. Dak Prescott has not yet had more than 272 yards passing in any of his 6 games, just 1 multi-touchdown game as a passer. And that's a weird start for a quarterback who at times has been, very fantasy friendly. And if you look at his EPA or expected points added numbers on a per dropback basis, he is better than the league average, just in terms of raw EPA per dropback, according to next gen stats. But if you adjust that for opponents faced, he's been pretty much exactly average. So not a lot of upside. Just one game with over 20 FanDuel points, which came before the bye, thanks to a good rushing game with 40 yards and a touchdown on the ground. But the salary of 7,300. We're talking about those big three quarterbacks this week. If you're not getting one of those, you need someone who can get you like 25, and he can clearly get that. He just got very, very close to it. But it's just really hard to figure out this offense overall with like okay efficiency and dispersed target shares. If you look at the games with Brandon Cooks active, Michael Gallup leads the team with a 19.6% target share. That's 6 targets per game. CeeDee Lamb's at 19%. Jake Ferguson, 16%. Cooks, 14%. Pollard, 13.7% though. But if you look like deeper than that, because this is just a really hard team to figure out. If you look at games with Brandon Cooks, and whenever the score has been within 7 points either way, Dak Prescott has 57 pass attempts. It's not a lot to go off of, but he's been good on those. 8.4 yards per attempt, 0.23 passing net expected points per dropback, which is like 2.5 times the league average. Taking sacks there, but as you pointed out to me, offensive line is now healthier, so thanks for that one. But in that split, Michael Gallup has a 28% target share. Lamb's at 19%, Pollard 17.5%, Ferguson 12%. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb. I like him a lot, even at the salary of 78. Especially if you stack him with Dak, like that helps offset some of that. Because CeeDee Lamb always feels like he's just high salary no matter what he's doing. Never feels like he drops off. But Pollard, we've said is our pretty much favorite play of the week across the board. But where are you with Dak? Michael Gallup. I don't think we have to get to Jake Ferguson. We have another value tight end, but it's a week where we need to kind of allocate some salary at tight end. But the question that I thought of was, we just kind of went through that process of like, can we even get to AJ Brown? Do you anticipate a lot of like Cup or Nakua stacks with Lamb? Because that might be really hard to do.
Yeah, it might be hard. But it's made easier by using Dak at 60 or 73.
Yeah.
So I feel like Dak, like it's one of those situations where has he not had upside because he can't have upside, or is he not had upside because he hasn't,
Right.
And I think he can have upside. So go ahead.
No, it's just funny because sometimes I'll say someone might have upside, and you're like, you rattle off the game logs of yards that they've had. You're like, this is proof that they don't have upside.
Yeah, but those guys aren't Dak.
And I know. No, I'm with you. I'm not besmirching Dak in any sense here.
Yeah.
Give me all the pro Dak stuff you got.
Yeah. Also, like, again, hashtag watch the film, bro. Like, he looked kind of fast in that rushing touchdown, which was surprising to me because I haven't like seen that out of Dak in like, I think since that ankle injury, honestly. Like, I haven't seen him run like that in a bit. So that was pretty encouraging to me too. So they get the offensive line healthier, facing a Rams defense that's not great. It is a decent total, decent spread. I actually bet the Rams plus 6.5. So I think this game could be pretty tight. I think that Dak checks a lot of boxes. So my main lineup, I want to get to one of the elite guys. I want them in my like first lineup. But like my second or third highest single entry lineup, I might wind up on Dak with a CeeDee Lamb, probably Nakua. I should probably go Cup realistically. One of those guys. Or Henderson. Sorry, Henderson. I'll go Henderson. Yeah, there we go. It's easier. A Dak, Pollard, Lamb, Henderson game stack. I'm into that. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything wrong with that. But yeah, my question was like, do you think you can actually prioritize like Cup and CeeDee Lamb stacks? Because it's difficult.
Prioritize no. Get to it, yes.
Cup coming off of a down game after feeling like he was unfadable.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
That's kind of when you want to get back.
Correct.
Prevented the salary from climbing. And he's almost to the point, like he was almost getting to the point where he was at his max. But I think if you're like, again, single entry is different than like your main lineup or your head-to-head lineup. You can build different single entry lineups. A single entry lineup, even though Jim and I, it sounds like we're pretty much in agreement where there's the top 3 quarterbacks. We might have different orders, but maybe you're talking me into just going Mahomes with the matchup.
Yeah.
But Dak is probably like a Dak stack with Lamb and Cup, and like forcing yourself to get a little bit different. You can even put Henderson in that because the salary is low enough.
For sure.
That's an interesting start to a single entry lineup for sure.
I agree. It would not be my highest dollar single entry, but like, I think I'll get there in single entry at some point. So I'd agree with that. And Pollard, best play on the slate, accounting for salary. We're not concerned about the lack of efficiency. I'm not. I'm just asking you to make sure.
No, he's either done and is now bad, or it's just been, like you said, with Dak, like it just hasn't been there yet.
Yeah. And it's the line injuries. It's getting him back from that broken leg at the end of last year, stuff like that. So I'm not super concerned about that personally, and I'm very okay with Cowboys across the board this week. Let's go now to my first trend. We talked before about game stacks and, which games to stack, talking spreads and stuff like that, but we haven't talked a lot about the prevalence of game stacks. And I got a question on Twitter last week from Robert saying that he had seen that tournament winning lineups this year weren't game stacking as much. And totals have been low this year, which does make game stacking more difficult. So I wanted to dig in to see if game stacks have been less prevalent in perfect lineups this year than in years past. And it is true that game stacking has been less prevalent overall in 2023. Overall, 34% of non-defenses in perfect lineups have been part of a game stack. So 34% of players have been tied to a player on the opposing team in a perfect lineup. That's actually the lowest number across 6 seasons that FanDuel has had the flex spot. It's been 40% each of the past 3 seasons. So 40% each of the past 3 years, 34% this year. So game stacking has been less prevalent here than it has been recently. That's very important. But 34% is still not a small number. That's an average of 2.38 players per perfect lineup who have been game stacked. So we're still seeing game stacks pop up. And this is not the format that is best at illustrating how important game stacks are, because you're getting just the best of the best at each position. Single team stacks have been more prevalent this year than in years past, actually. In 2021, there was an average of 1.3 single team stacks per perfect lineup. It was 1.33 last year, and it's 1.43 so far this year. This does fit the narrative where if it's harder to find full games that are enticing, maybe we should just load up on the good offenses and have multiple pieces from those good offenses. 30% of game stacks here have involved the Dolphins. So that backs up the thought process of just use the good offenses. What else could you possibly want? So I don't want to over adjust here. It's more viable to have just single team stacks with no bringbacks on slates like this one, where one team is clearly more palatable than the other team. But that does also increase the appeal of single team stacks. And game stacks are still relevant, even though enough where we should look for mini stacks in spots where we don't have a bring back with our quarterback. So like mini stacks are still pretty viable is what I would say. Any alterations for your process based on this, with full game stacks being a bit less prevalent, but single team stacks being more prevalent, especially focusing on a slate like this week's?
Yeah, so I'm just going to sort of sum it up in the sense of long term, there are reasons to game stack.
Correct.
There are not necessarily reasons to game stack if the game stacks are bad and you have other options.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So this week, 13 games, 26 teams. You're going to have more one-off options than you would otherwise. If it's a 10-game main slate, you want to get like the probability if a game does go off, like game stacking it is going to help you more than it would this week, because someone from a one-off game can have a big game. And it does kind of go back to something we talked about with the flex, where it's like you're still considering, like if you're considering receiver in the flex, you're most likely considering a larger pool. So while the lineups that are kind of ahead or finishing well might kind of skew a little bit toward receiver or basically be 50-50 with running back, like the probability that you're getting it right, it does inherently go down because
Mhm.
there is that long-term positive correlation between game stacking, but that's
Yep.
different than just saying, well, I like Mahomes and I want to play Kelsey or even Rashee Rice or something. I have to bring it back with again, long term, there's a slight boost there. Um, but it's more, I mean, the research I've done actually just shows that you want to stack your quarterback with a wide receiver one, tight end one, wide receiver two. If you could, the other quarterback. So if you want to do some super flex stuff, like there you go. But other than that, then it's like the QB one and the wide receiver two from the other team. So like, but that's only a slight boost anyway. So like again, I'm not necessarily changing stuff because of the early season trends for this year. It's going to be slate specific. And while we always talk about game stacks, there are some weeks where they're like, we got to rank the game stacks we want. This week, it's like, could you find a single game stack that you absolutely loved and prioritize? I think based on how we've talked, and if I say game stack as in quarterback plus multiple other players, including both teams, the the top stack we probably have this week would be Dak and
Yeah.
like just and that's not necessarily going to be the way that I build my default lineup. So
I think the
it is
other
kind of
yeah. Go ahead.
good.
No, go ahead.
It is kind of wild that there's like it's hard to find one game stack out of 13.
Yeah.
But
And I think that part of the reason why is a lot of the good offenses are facing teams with dispersed market shares. Like,
yeah,
rather get hit by a bus than use any Patriot. Rather get hit by a scooter than use a Bronco. Like, scooter's not gonna hurt you as bad. So I'd rather get by a scooter than use a Bronco. So like I think that's part of it too. Another game stack though could be Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Trey McBride. You're going to talk about in your second trend the Cardinals defense because Brandon, we got some good offense in face of bad defenses, and the Baltimore Arizona game is definitely one of them. So talk to me about Arizona. What we should do with the Ravens here.
yeah, it's going to be a good weather situation too for this game. And the
Hopefully, if it's not good weather, it's indoors. Something has gone very wrong.
But we got some wind concerns as
Sure.
we're gonna have the rest of the year. We don't have that. I'm just basically like ramping into why Lamar's
Also,
gonna be my
and the Ravens never play in low winds, so this is great.
yeah. I'm still tilting my decision last week, but
Sorry, I
um,
didn't think about that. My bad. I shouldn't have brought that up. You're right. That was unintentional. I'm sorry. That was rude.
um, I mean I played that lineup elsewhere, but like it's fine.
Yeah.
So this is why I like Lamar the most, and just this offense in general. The Cardinals defense. We haven't. I don't know if we've really done a whole lot of defensive trends yet this year, but Cardinals have been shredded. 31st in adjusted pass defense according to numberFire's metrics. 22nd against the run as well. 31st in completion percentage over expectation allowed. 32nd in yards per target allowed on downfield throws. They're 20th in ADOT, so allowing a higher than average depth of target this year. 32nd in pressure rate according to Next Gen Stats. None of those are good. Additionally, they're 26th in rushing success rate allowed to running backs, 30th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to running backs. Doesn't have a whole lot of relevance this week, although we'll ask you about potentially the backs here at the end of this, just a heads up. They're 32nd in adjusted FanDuel points per target and catch rate over expectation allowed to receivers. They've been relatively solid against tight ends, but along with that, they haven't even faced an end zone target out of 34 targets this year. They've kind of really only faced like George Kittle among top end tight ends. Darren Waller, if you want to throw him in that conversation, but he got the 76 yards and 8 targets. Jake Ferguson, Logan Thomas had decent games relative. So like, I'm not worried about Mark Andrews. I don't want to look at the tight end numbers and say that they're a good defense against tight ends, but put all that together, and Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback play of the week. I'm not going to overthink that one. No concerns with him in terms of like second time around divisional matchup stuff, whatever. But Mark Andrews' salary 7,700. that's still in consideration where there's a little bit of room for error. I mentioned like if Kelsey gets you 13 or 14, it's probably not enough. If Andrews does, you can still work with that at the salary. But as far as the receivers go, 4 games with Odell Beckham and Mark Andrews. In those, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews both have a 23.4% target share, 7.5 per game. Catch rate over expectations, way below 0. So there's room for growth here, especially in this matchup. Odell Beckham's got a 14.8% target share, but was at 25% last week. It's kind of dispersed behind Andrews and Flowers, but I'm fine with that. If you want to get to another option, like Beckham is that player, the salary's low at 5,400. If you want to take a chance on saving salary within your game stack or within your quarterback stack. As for the receiver, the running backs are never, ever core plays for us on this team. Even J.K. Dobbins when healthy, at least for me. I guess I shouldn't speak for you in that regard, but in 5 games with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, Edwards is at a 54% snap rate, 15.4 adjusted opportunities per game, which is carries plus double your targets. That's not usually what we're looking for. Hill's at 43% of the snaps, 11 adjusted opportunities, but salary's 5,300. Edwards is 6,600. Similar red zone numbers. If we're really in on this offense, like, could you who are you considering from this offense?
Not the running backs. I
not
think
even not even okay.
No, absolutely not. Rather get hit by a sedan. We'll put that there. It's not a bus, but it's a sedan. It actually might be a bus. I don't know. Whatever. Zay Flowers. I don't know what my highest ever roster rate for a wide receiver is. He might flirt with that this week though. $6,500 playing indoors against a bad defense with a very good quarterback who is playing at an MVP level. He's getting more downfield work now that the offensive line is healthier. Give me a counterpoint to Zay. One counterpoint.
Me?
You got anything?
Me? I don't got nothing. I don't know.
Okay, good. I think he's the best receiver play on this slate. And the more I think about it, the more I realize I should just have Lamar 1 and then view Mahomes and Hurts as being a tier behind him. Because the appeal to me in Mahomes is great quarterback, bad defense. But that's the exact same thing Lamar has going. His salary is $200 lower and he runs more. So maybe it's Lamar tier 1, Mahomes Hurts tier 1.5 or tier 2. Sure. Is that too far or no?
No, that's why I didn't have a great answer for Mahomes or Hurts. It's just because Lamar was going to be the guy.
That's fair.
So, and the way that I built, I don't just load up on tons of lineups. I really try to curate lineups, and Lamar's going to be the dude for me.
Yeah,
because we know to stack him with. Even if you don't get to Andrews, stack him with
definitely
Zay.
Can this week.
You can for sure.
Yeah.
But stack him with Zay. We're not forcing game stacks, but there are potential stacking candidates from Arizona this week. Yeah. Especially Trey McBride, who I'll talk about in player picks, but I guess I pulled him up now, so we can talk about him too. But
I probably should add Zach Ertz in the injury section. Didn't think about it because he's irrelevant. But Trey McBride, 47. He had an increased role in week number 6, and then Ertz got hurt in week 7. So his role is pretty good. I think he's the only value tight end I like this week. You could bring him back. Have a Lamar, Zay, McBride game stack is going to give you a ton of flexibility for the rest of your lineup. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very attractive. I'd rather get to the 6,000 range of tight end with Kittle, Goddard, Hawkinson being there, but that's totally fine as a spend down option. I'll have the game stack in single entry for sure for this week.
Yeah, that's and Marquise Brown revenge game. So
yeah, that's true. Will the revenge game make Josh Dobbs stop throwing poopy passes or no?
I mean, if you're just box score scouting Brown, 7+ targets in all but this first game.
Yeah.
I know the yardage hasn't been there.
Yeah.
It's due to efficiency, but the salary accounts for that.
True. It has come down. So So are the Ravens like the best team on the main slate as far as like considering salaries, considering usage, considering matchup?
Yeah, because it's Lamar, it's Zay, and it's Andrews, and that's
They have
it.
the top play at two separate positions and arguably a third with Andrews. So yeah.
Yeah.
Best team on the main slate. I agree with that. Let's talk about my second trend now and talk about the Vikings with no Justin Jefferson 2-0, which is pretty impressive considering they face the 49ers. They're facing the Packers this week, who have the 24th ranked defense by my numbers when you factor in a prior. They rank 27th when you exclude the prior. So I want to dig in to see what things have looked like with no Jefferson. Kirk Cousins' overall numbers are decent. He's at 0.17, passing net expected points per dropback. Again, 0.10, typically the average, a bit lower so far this year, but pretty good numbers for Cousins there. He struggled in the Bears game, but wind was a pretty big factor there, and he played very well against San Francisco. I'm not going to get to Kirk, but it does help me feel better about the pass catchers here. In the games with no Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson leads with a 27% target share, also has 25% of the deep work, which was not something he was getting pre-Jefferson injury. Jordan Addison is at only 21% overall targets, but has a 33% deep target share with 50% inside the red zone. KJ Osborne, not enough there. So Addison's overall shares are not huge, but he's getting and converting on high leverage work. His salary's not low at 73, but you can still definitely justify that. TJ Hawkinson getting enough work where he's a viable pivot off of George Kittle at 65. And like with Sam Darnold being there, maybe Hawkinson is just straight up the better play. I wouldn't say that personally, but you could pitch me on it. He's at 50 and 86 yards across 2 games. I'm not going to get to Osborne to 64, but I'm ignoring the backfield as well. So I like Hawkinson a lot and should be able to get to Addison. Anything else stand out for you on this Vikings team with no Jefferson?
You mentioned the Ravens have like probably the top two or like 2 top players at their positions with Lamar and Zay. I would say like Minnesota's probably got like 2 top 5, or like for Hawkins probably top 3, but like I wouldn't say Addison's a top 3 receiver play, but yeah, they played on Monday, so the performance didn't affect their salaries at all. I don't think we'll get Addison at low popularity, but also it's a 13 game slate, so everything's gonna be flatter to begin with. And maybe if there's like 1 or 2 guys who really pop off in terms of chalkiness, then you avoid. But it does, those extra games do spread things out more. I talk about, in the past, coming off of games with touchdowns and just big performances that leads to salary increases, and you know touchdowns are just like a clustered sort of number. They're not evenly distributed throughout the week. So, and statistically speaking, because he scored twice last week, like he is less likely to score just based on his long-term baseline. But the salary didn't jump up, and if his salary, if he played on like Sunday afternoon, the salary would probably be like 78 or 79 even.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. Love
Addison or Jalen
Hawkinson.
Waddle?
Waddle. Slightly.
Yeah, I think so too, but yeah,
It's close.
it's close. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at with him as well.
Although I like Christian Watson enough that maybe that skews things.
Sure.
Because I will game stack when I can.
Sure.
And so maybe I just go Watson and Hawkinson.
Yeah. I think, yeah. Addison's pretty good. I think I prefer Waddle, but like I'd like to get to him for this week. Weather for this week, not as bad as it has been in previous weeks. Looks like there could be some rain in some spots. That's harder to track on Thursday. Wind speed's stickier. And the one spot where wind speeds are pretty high right now is in Miami for the Patriots and Dolphins. 13 miles per hour now. That has come down from where it was earlier on this week. But again, we had the Tyreek injury too. So I'm more sour on that game and that team than I was earlier on this week. But check back if the wind goes down, that would lower at least one of the concerns in that regard. Let's go now to our positional plays for week number 8 in the NFL on the main slate. Brandon, starting off at quarterback, who stands out to you on FanDuel this week?
Lamar's my guy again this week. Already just ran down all of the positives in terms of the matchup. Arizona 31st in adjusted pass defense according To numberFire's metrics, 32nd in pressure rate and yards per target allowed on downfield passes. So passes traveling at least 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. That leaves room for big plays, controlled environment. Love that. Love the rushing from Lamar. Biggest concern probably is true blowout potential, but we saw that last week with a blowout, and he got over 33 FanDuel points. So I guess the biggest concern is that for me with Lamar, there's always that chance that he has a really efficient game, but they just hand the ball off at the goal line a couple
Yeah.
times, and he kind of comes away from like a really good game with one passing touchdown, and like that's the sort of only thing. But I'm not going to overthink it this week. I think Lamar is just the best play, and two very obvious stacking candidates really help out. I think that's also why like Hurts has three potential stack candidates. Mahomes has like 1.5, and maybe two if you include Pacheco, but
Rashee
Lamar
Rice, I think, is
feels
in there.
what's that?
I think Mahomes is 2 because Kelsey is a 1, and then Rashee Rice and Pacheco are both a half.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was viewing it too.
Mhm.
But Lamar has always had that ability because of the market shares. So I'm there with Lamar. Again, if I'm going with someone other than Lamar, I'm most likely getting to Hurts and Mahomes. But if not, Dak I think is the best play at a salary of 7,300. Haven't seen him on the main slate in a while, as I talked about. The EPA per dropback is above average in terms of raw EPA per dropback. Adjusted for opponents faced, it's about he's just sort of played long term to the level of his opponents. But again, not a lot of dropbacks whenever the game's been close, and having Brandon Cooks out on the field. He's been efficient on those aside from getting sacked a lot, but the actual pass attempts he's getting off would put him in that like upper tier of efficiency. So kind of want to take advantage of the salary being low here, and stack him with CeeDee Lamb, and I'll stack him with Tony Pollard though too.
Yeah, I think the Dak is also the best lower salary guy for this week. He's my number 2 player pick. And again, just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not possible. They're at home, they're playing indoors, they're playing on turf, taking on a Rams defense that has not been very good this year. They've not been as bad as I thought they might be, but they also have not been that bad. And like, if you're looking for like traditional game stacks, which you alluded to earlier on, the most traditional game to stack this week is probably this one, where it has high enough total, tight enough spread, a spread where I do think could be tighter than what it currently is at. I think that adds up to make Dak a pretty solid play in the low range. But like you said, I think it is a good week to spend up at quarterback, which is why Lamar Jackson is also my number 1 playing indoors. They never get to play in low wind. It's weird. Like for whatever reason, even last year, like before Lamar got hurt, every single week they were playing in stupid wind. So when he plays indoors, I just want to take advantage. $8,800 is a pretty reasonable salary. It's below Hurts. It's below Mahomes. Again, this is a week where I just want to target the good offenses against bad defenses. Lamar Jackson fits that, and he does that while adding rushing to the fold as well. So I feel like we want to get to Lamar once again this week. Let's go down to running back. Who stands out to you there?
Tony Pollard for sure. Salary of 7,600, very, very reasonable. 91 scrimmage yards per game, about a 70% snap rate, but this team's really hard to like pin down in terms of what they might do in a competitive game for a full 60 minutes. But really good target share, over 15%, almost 5 targets per game, and a 58% red zone rushing share, and almost 40% of the team's red zone carries plus targets. So he's my favorite running back of the week in that game that is traditionally stackable for sure. One thing that I don't want to overlook is like Pollard and Nakua kind of stacks, because running back receiver is a very good stack to have as well. But next love is Breece Hall, salary of 7,200 against the Giants. You know, he's just going to get more and more freed up as he gets extended. Snap count limited early on in the season, but over 50% the past 2 games, 52% and 68% in weeks 5 and 6 respectively. But in those 2 games, averaging 143.5 yards from scrimmage, but 194 and 93 if memory serves. That's awesome. Tons of red zone work. 85% of the red zone carries in that split. Almost 50% of the routes in that split. Giants not a good defense by rushing yards over expectation per carry. So he has the ability for splash plays for sure. Breece Hall, his salary is probably going to be higher than this this time next week. Third love, Darrell Henderson. Just like the salary in the matchup again. Very stackable game. I will stack Henderson and Pollard, running back stacks. Definitely not averse to that. 58% snap rate in week 7. Could have been a better just performance. He's not necessarily someone who, in the past we've been low on Darrell Henderson when he's been the Rams featured back. This is a bit different. The offense is playing well with the good passing efficiency, but twice as many routes as Royce Freeman last week as well. The fact that they had to kind of figure out what to do at running back and just went with Henderson tells me something. So I'm gonna feel pretty good with that. There is a risk that he scales back to some degree, or they try to mix things up, but there's also a chance that he just gets more involved. So there is a level of uncertainty, and I want to flag that, which is why he's not going to be someone that I play in every lineup.
Correct.
I'll get close to playing Tony Pollard in every lineup at that salary, but there is you got to make sure you're not feeling like you know exactly what the coaches are going to do.
Yeah, and I think that's why Henderson's also in my loves, because that works in the positive sense too. Because remember, when he was talking last week, he's my number 3 love for this week. When he was talking, I think Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic tweeted this out. He was talking about getting in game shape during practice last week. Yeah. He was not, working on scheme stuff. Like, he was still trying to get conditioned. So getting 18 carries and 2 targets on a 58% snap rate, when that's the case, I think that's a positive, and that means there's room for expansion. It could go down because Myles Gaskin likely to be active this week, but Henderson had all 3 chances inside the red zone for this team. I think his salary should be in the $6,700 range or so, but he's $5,900 instead. So as far as value running backs, unless we get Savon Ahmed or Jeff Wilson, I think he's the one guy I'm willing to trust this week in that range. I agree with you where I want to keep a lid on the roster rate, probably around 40 to 50% or so. Whereas Pollard, I'll go 70, 80, somewhere in there. But Henderson, very much worth our trust this week. My top level running back is a guy I just want to keep on using until they force me not to, and that's Alvin Kamara, $8,300 in the games he's played so far this year. 17.3 carries, 9.8 targets per game. He is basically from a rushing perspective, he's Travis Etienne rushing with Wan'Dale Robinson passing added on to it. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a guy at the low ADOT. And he was the first guy who popped to my mind. But insane usage for Kamara. Last week, and I love guys who can do this. He scored 23.3 FanDuel points with 0 touchdowns. And it's not like 0 touchdowns is the expectation for him, because he has a 49% red zone share this year. He did lose a goal line rush to Taysom Hill last week. That can happen. That's going to happen. But also, again, if he can get you 23 FanDuel points with 0 touchdowns, if he scores once, that's 29.3. And we don't get that a lot right now. Based on the Colts defense, not what we need to fear. So Alvin Kamara, 83. My top love at running back this week. In terms of salary, I like Pollard more. Pollard is my number 2 love, but that's just because of salary. I agree with you. Pollard is the top running back play on the slate. We have not seen this team in a normal game yet, or very few normal games. Pollard still, though, 16 carries per game, 4.8 targets per game, 39% red zone share. I can stack him up with Darrell Henderson. I love that. Stack him up with Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. I think he grades out really, really well. So Tony Pollard going my favorite player running back. So my 3 loves this week: Alvin Kamara, Tony Pollard, and Darrell Henderson. Moving to, I'm on trends for the graphic thing. Idiot. Okay, positional plays. Moving to receiver. Who stands out to you there?
Jordan Addison at a salary of 73, again, would be higher if the salaries were set after his Monday night game, but I'm not necessarily looking at he had a good game, so he can't have a good game again, because the salary hasn't changed. So that really helps out in that capacity. But 10 targets against a really good defense, 7 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And we want to talk about liking whenever players can put up FanDuel points without scoring. I like when players can make things happen on their own, and he definitely made that happen. There is a little bit of a risk of watching the film and seeing something like his long touchdown catch and thinking that's the norm.
Out of a guy's hands
and thinking that's the norm. But
yeah,
if you can do that, and he had other nice plays, that matters, because this team is without the best receiver in football. So of his 10 targets, 6 were downfield, 3 were in the red zone. If you account for giving those targets proper weight, he basically had a 16 target game. So that's awesome. Middling matchup, so he's a great play at this salary. Second love is Jalen Waddle, 7,100 against the Patriots. Second time around matchup. Don't know what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill. Kind of want him on the field, though, because it's just going to help Jalen Waddle have less attention on him. But 6 targets in that first matchup, 3 of them downfield for 86 yards, no touchdowns. But Patriots actually allowing a top 10 catch rate over expectation, allowed to receivers. So it's like a top 10 matchup. I still don't know how to cite that stat in particular, but it's a good matchup in terms of catch rate over expectation. And I think that Waddle, if Hill's not 100%, Waddle should get some extra looks. And then third love is no surprise. It's Zay Flowers, 23% target share in 4 games with both Odell Beckham and Mark Andrews. Good leverage on those, 3.5 downfield targets, 1.3 red zone targets. Really bad catch rate over expectation, but it's not because he's bad, I don't think. I think he's really good. I think it's just
Quarterback's
flukiness.
not bad either.
Yeah, so and what helps is the Cardinals are letting up a league high catch rate over expectation to receivers over 10% in the positive. So something's probably going to give soon, and I want to be there with Zay Flowers.
I would like to as well. My first love at receiver is Jalen Waddle. You mentioned him before, but I think that, like you said, he's viable even if Tyreek does go at 71. But if Tyreek doesn't go, think back to Jalen Waddle's rookie year. They had Tua Tagovailoa, but no Tyreek Hill, and that was before Mike McDaniel was there. But now we got Mike McDaniel there. Tua's playing better, and Waddle's salary is 71. His target share in that game could be bananas if there's no Tyreek Hill. Back spasms last week, but came back in the game. Got in a limited practice on Wednesday, which means he should be good to go. I think Waddle is viable if there is no even if Tyreek Hill does play, but he is a must if Tyreek Hill, borderline must if Tyreek Hill does not go.
Yeah. I think to clarify, I said I would prefer Tyreek, but if I would prefer Tyreek to play, but if Tyreek played but wasn't 100%, it'd probably take attention away, but still funnel. Either way, he's a good play. So that's kind of what I was getting at.
I agree with that as well. So Waddle, definitely a priority for me. Regardless, though, I think my top receiver play on this slate is going to be Zay Flowers, kind of akin to Pollard, where he's just going to be in a lot of my lineups. We've had 4 games with Odell playing and with Mark Andrews. You alluded to these shares earlier on, but 26% overall share for Zay Flowers in those games with 3 deep targets per game. And the deep market shares have gone up with Ronnie Stanley being healthy. It gives Lamar more time to throw, facing a defense that doesn't put up a lot of resistance. There is no wind in this game, which is very rare for the Ravens as well. So, if you look at Zay Flowers' market shares, his salary should be in the 7,000s, but he's $6,500. I talked before how I just want to use good offenses facing bad defenses this week. Zay Flowers fits that to a T and gets me good market shares while doing so. So, Zay Flowers, I want to be aggressive in rostering him this week, and I want to be as high at him as I can justifiably get on a wide receiver. My third love is also a guy who is on a good offense facing a bad defense. There are 3 spots this week, Brandon, where I have
Rice.
What?
Is it Rashee Rice?
No. Well, yes, he also fits that, but same salary and actually same rookie class, along with Zay Flowers. But there are 3 offenses this week, Brandon. Top 10 in offense this year in my model, adjusting for schedule, ignoring a prior, who are facing a bottom 5 defense. Those teams are the Chiefs facing the Broncos. Those teams are the Ravens facing the Cardinals, and the Houston MF and Texans taking on the Carolina Panthers. And we got Tank Dell down at $6,000. 20% target share in the full games he has played. The 22% deep target share. They are scheming him touches inside the red zone. His salary is $6,000 against a non-elite defense. I think Nico Collins is also justifiable at 72, but my goodness, Tank Dell, let's party. I am not going to exclude CJ Stroud from being my player pool by the time we get to Sunday. I will say that as well. I'm not going to game stack with Adam Thielen because I respect myself, but I think that Tank Dell is really fun. I think this offense in general is way fun. Full respect to them. It is the seventh consecutive time this year I bet the Texans money line. Did it again on Monday. What could possibly go wrong? So Tank Dell, really fun play at receiver this week. Let's go to tight end. Who stands out to you there?
TJ Hawkinson is going to be I think he's the guy I'm trying to prioritize most at the position. Good combination of upside, good salary, good enough matchup. Green Bay's 23rd in adjusted pass defense according to numberFire's metrics. Hawkinson trails only Travis Kelce in my weekly, I call him boom bust, but basically floor ceiling ratio in terms of my simulations, but 27% target share without Jefferson, 68 yards per game. A lot of tight end upside on the slate, relatively speaking. So you want to have someone with a pulse. Hawkinson for me is that the safest sort of way to go with the best salary. Would love to get to Andrews, would love to get to Kelsey, but Hawkinson's going to be probably the guy I try to prioritize getting into my main lineup. Otherwise, I like Dallas Goedert, like your other love, because we're both on Hawkinson here, but I think your I don't say only options, but your best option is probably Trey McBride at a salary 4,700, especially in bringbacks with the Ravens. Zach Ertz on injured reserve, so opportunity is going to be there for McBride. The routes have bumped up before the injury as well, 46.5% and 48.6% the past 2 games, even with Ertz active. So it's a little bit less of an assumption that, he wasn't playing, but now there's an opportunity for him. He was already ramping up. We've seen Zach Ertz get a lot of volume. McBride's had a 9.5% target share, which is like, that's not what I'm selling you on. I'm selling on like the vacation of 19.5% target share from Ertz, with McBride likely stepping in to that. So, or getting some of that, getting more routes. I think he's going to be good. Is just a sort of long-term tight end as well. So I'm there. The question is whether I get there in in my main lineup. I think the risk might be a little bit too much with the amount of tight ends we have on the board.
So with Lamar in your primary lineup, probably no bring back in the main one, and then having McBride as bring back in a secondary one, correct?
Probably. I'm still good with Marquise Brown.
Yeah.
As well. So
I think I'd rather go no game stack than.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. My first love is also TJ Hawkinson, 27% target share in games with no Jefferson. He's getting more deep work in that time, which means an easier access to upside. Packers defense has been pretty rough so far this year, and I can get to this range this weekend. I would like to. My number 2 love is George Kittle, even with Sam Darnold starting. Kittle's salary is $6,100. They played 4 games with Christian McCaffrey being active and with no Deebo Samuel and with Juwan Jennings at the start of last year. In that time, Kittle has a 26% target share with 40% of the deep targets and 44% inside the red zone. He is averaging 79 yards from scrimmage in those games. And I say yards from scrimmage because he gets some rush attempts too. I can't pass him up at this salary, even with Darnold starting. I think that we need to get to Kittle. If I have one lineup, I'm probably going Lamar, Zay, and then Kittle versus going with Andrews because I like Kittle enough to say that. So Kittle to me at 61, better play even in Lamar lineups than Andrews. Maybe that's dumb, but whatever. Defense, what you looking at there?
Is Goddard close to that or no?
Closer with Darnold starting.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
But I still think that Kittle's a tier above him. Maybe not a full tier, half tier. Let's say half tier.
So wait, is Kittle your top play then over Hawkinson?
By a tiny bit, yes. Maybe that's dumb. It could be dumb. I want to acknowledge that. It could be dumb.
Well, Hawkinson at times looks a little dusty. He's
hurt.
Kittle's great, so
yeah,
I get it. Defense, I'm going with the Falcons at 3,900 against some combination of Will Levis, Malik Willis, whatever they're doing there. We talk about this a lot. We want sacks, we want interceptions, so we want passing volume. That's a little bit of a risk.
Will give you those.
But Atlanta's a really good rush defense as well, so they might force some passing, and I'm fine with it. 3,900. I'm not going to overthink this one, just because there might be a little bit less passing than I typically would want.
Yeah, I think they're totally in play. My favorite's the Vikings at 37. They played much better recently than earlier in the year. If you exclude touchdowns, because touchdowns are fluky for defenses, but excluding touchdowns, the Vikings defense in their past 4 games has scored 11, 2, 15, and 8 FanDuel points. And that includes games against the Chiefs and the 49ers. They've been really good recently. I'm also going to use the Bengals at 36 at times, taking on Sam Darnold, because Jameis Darnold is back, and he's called Jameis Darnold for a reason. It's because he loves picks, loves sacks, crazy guy. Colts are in play, Packers, Steelers, Giants, Falcons, all below 4,000. So I see no reason to spend more than $4,000 a week to defense, you could just mix and match with those options and feel pretty good about things. Any final thoughts for you, Brandon, on this week 8 main slate before we close up shop for today?
Even with the amount of cross-off games, or mostly cross-off games, I think we covered every game pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
The only, I know you'll probably say no.
Is it Mixon?
What?
You can ask me about Mixon?
It was more like Burrow and Chase or something, like to be different.
I'd rather roster them than Mixon, just because the 49ers are pretty, I don't know. I think they're pretty good against the rush. They're good against the pass too, but like,
Yeah.
adjusting for opponents, they're like a bit better than average against the pass, whereas they're much better than average against the rush. So I'd rather go with the passing game for the Bengals than the rush game.
I don't think you have to get to Burrow, but I think that
it's worth asking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's all that we have here for today on the preview show. If you're looking for a preview of Thursday Night Football from a betting perspective, Tom Vecchio has you covered over on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, breaking down Buccaneers and Bills over there. We'll have a preview for Sunday Night Football up as well via Primetime Tom, both on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and FanDuel TV Plus. If you want to get Tom's breakdowns of NBA DFS, get those right here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy podcast feed, along with FanDuel TV Plus, and the Heat Check shows go up on the FanDuel YouTube page as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm on Twitter at Gdula13, GDULA13.
And I'm on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. I'm also on Threads at Jim.Sannes. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you on Week 8 NFL DFS. We'll talk to you once again Monday to wrap it all up. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.